Welcome to the Metal Substance Podcast, a podcast specifically made for the eventual funding of a city metal philharmonic. I'm your host, call me Victor. I encourage the practice of listening to metal while I talk about it, which is why there is no background music. Today, I wanted to talk about death metal. I'd say death metal is my favorite subgenre of metal. Its borders have become vast and endlessly explorable, and I do plan on covering it quite a lot, but not for a while. However, I'm so eager that I thought it'd be nice to suggest 10 death metal albums to listen to besides the death albums themselves, which you'd better believe we are going to get into in maybe 80 episodes or so. Anyway, I'll give all these albums a serious video later, but for now, let me tell you why these 10 albums will give you a broad introduction to death metal wherever you are coming from. Okay, number 1. Possess Seven Churches, the great missing link in the evolution of thrash into death metal. Except it's never been missing. It was there the whole time. It is the most frequently cited first death metal album, but it's kind of in a weird place because it's a form of death thrash. It like creates a genre of one, and then death metal continues to evolve with Floridian death metal very, very quickly. Anyway, it's essential. You still can hear a brand of death metal that has a foot rooted in the past. Sometimes you're listening to it and you're kind of going like, oh, is that King Diamond riff? Although it's also ahead of its time. So sometimes I'm listening to Seven Churches and I go, wow, that kind of sounds like the Sodom riff from Persecution Mania, except it can't be because 15-year-old Larry Lundell is playing it 2 years before Persecution Mania even came out. So it's basically the best place to start, and it's good old-fashioned rock. All right. Number 2, Morbid Angel's Altars of Madness. There's a wonderful saying that if you don't like Altars of Madness, you don't like death metal. And if you don't like death metal, you need to listen to Altars of Madness until you do. The riffs of Morbid Angel's Altars of Madness are like eggs to the rest of cooking. Obviously, you can eat them on their own, but they also garnish everything else. And it's just frantic. There are solos everywhere. The riffs never stop. There's blast beats. Now it's rock and roll. Okay, now we're hitting the toms. Now the guitars are squealing. And now we're back into a riff on a dime. It's very atmospheric, but it never takes itself too seriously. They'll be suddenly dropping back into, oh, we just invented groove metal. And the next thing you know, they're inventing second wave black metal. Check out Chapel of Ghouls for what I'm talking about. It's also got one of the most iconic death metal album covers, and it's it's the litmus test. It's the astrology exam, whatever you want to say. Which of these faces is your favorite on the Altars of Madness cover? Let me know in the comments below. Okay, number 3. Pestilence's Consuming Impulse, of course spelled with V's, so you know their true cult in 1989. There's a lot of reasons to listen to this album. One is that when you think of iconic death metal songs, one of the things that maybe come to mind for people who are more in the know, who've already been in listening to death metal for a while, is Voice of the Soul. It's a beautiful instrumental piece on the Sound of Perseverance album that Teth did. Pestilence did it a decade earlier. See track 9, Porphyrious Souls, for what I'm talking about. This has one of my favorite ever guitar tones. It feels like a punk or a hardcore record, but it's made with death metal production values. I don't mean a budget, I mean values. There's the thick guitar, the palm muting's incredible. The very vocals that certainly stand out, that are still clearly death metal, but that raspiness, about, which is, they scream about not having water. The Process of Suffocation on here is an environmental song way ahead of Cattle Decapitation's work. Anyway, I'd like to get more into this, but let's move on. Number 4, Nocturnus, their debut album from 1990. Blessed be the guitar licks, because that's what this album is. It's just pure death metal guitar lick pornography. It's a series of guitar solos that occasionally break out into riffs which are also freaking awesome. You could just feel that the dual lead and rhythm guitarists, who are Mike Davis and Sean Bikini, incidentally, are so eager sometimes for the singing to be finished so they could just start shooting out hot licks again, and sometimes they don't wait for it. Meanwhile, speaking of the singer, Mike Browning, the singer slash drummer, which is kind of cool, it sometimes feels like he's just trying to see how fast he can get these guys to go, but just like ramping up the tempo again. It's an album with a really scientific vibe. I mean, just look at the cover. And it's going to have enormous influences on tech deck for decades to come. So much so that honestly, by this point, it just feels like sci-fi and tech death have become so intertwined that they maybe are inseparable at this point. Like, where's the tech death that sings about dragons instead of robots? Oh, hey, there, Gojira's where dragons dwell. Before I'm going on and on about Nocturnus now, but it's still rock and roll. You want to headbang to it. You want to mosh to it, skank to it. Geez, sometimes when I'm listening to Standing in Blood, I want to start doing a hoedown in the blood. There's keyboards here, but they're not prominent. And so it's kind of just expanding the soundscape. It's atypical death metal, but you would never for a minute question that it's not death metal. Because at all times, these guys are letting you know, hey, we can go heavier, faster, wilder than you whenever. Okay. That brings us to number 5. Oh, oops. That's slightly out of order. Number 5, Cynic's Focus. Talk about atypical death metal. This was the album that came out after Death's Human with some of the same, same cast. It's kind of like how John Coltrane was on Miles Davis' work, that sort of thing. Wink. This is very technical with very different guitar tones. There's a crunch there. I still consider this metal. The voice modulator that's used on this album, it gives it a very different vocal tones. And unlike Nocturnus, on Focus, there are long segments where there's no clear metal influence. Just do what the album says. Put it on and focus. Okay, this is maybe the controversial pick. Dark Tranquility is the Gallery from 1995. This was after Individual Thought Patterns came out. There are different polyrhythms everywhere on this album. It pops into something singable for the verse, but even then there's this constant harmonic complexity at work. The production, very crisp. I think this is jazz fusion turned into metal fusion, if I had to summarize it in a short way. And it's an album you have to experience. It feels comfortable. At least I feel very comfortable when I'm listening to it, but simultaneously I'm on the edge of my seat. The songs are of ununiform length, so if you like that kind of 1970s prog style, you're gonna have a good time here. And there's just so much happening where sometimes like it's time for some Spanish guitar, but just for 10 seconds because we got to move on. Like if you like Cryptic Shift and Barn and modern kind of tech death, this is going to be in your wheelhouse. If you like Santana 1970s jazz fusion, check this out. I really don't want to even talk about this too much because genuinely for something that's meant to be for beginners, is genuinely part of the fun of the gallery is being surprised by the things that happen along the way. Okay. 1999, Opeth's Still Life, the gloomy, the gothic. Now, Opeth, they've reached a point, there's maybe something to be said about Opethian is a style. It's something more than death metal, or it's its own offshoot. You could edit, but it's like where to start with them. And if we're talking about from the death metal lens, I think it's got to be Still Life more than Blackwater Park, because Blackwater Park, for good and bad, that's all at the eye of the beholder. It's the Steven Wilson influences there. Opeth Still Life is quote unquote pure Opeth, and just a terrific concept album, which there's so many of in death metal. Now, number 8. Oh gosh, I've got that's right. They're in the wrong order. Number 8. Just pick a Gojira album. I don't care. Just pick one and listen to it. I mean, it really did. You could be From Sirius to Mars is the super famous Mimi one, but you could do La Infant Sauvage, The Link, whatever. It doesn't matter which one you pick because you're not going to appreciate it right away. Now, Gojira, I think, has this reputation for being not heavy or even, I dare say, not metal. I think this just comes from the popularity thing. I mean, they're on TV shows. They played the Olympics. Also, I think it's because it's basically impossible to not feel better after you listen to a Gojira album. There's a few reasons for that, but I think one of them is because when antidepressant pills feel sad, they listen to Gojira bass lines. I mean, all of their albums they experiment, and yet all of their albums they retain their central sound. There's a lot of polyrhythms, shifting guitar tones, really high production, instantly recognizable vocals. And I think all of them are an excellent lesson in that harmonic complexity does not necessarily lessen appeal. Okay, but now 2019, the modern classic Cattle Decapitation's Death Atlas, our death grind representative, because we've been needing one. There's bands that talk about death. There's bands that talk about demons and evil and serial killers and such. Most bands don't write a song called Bring Back the Plague and actually summon a plague. And that's what Cattle Decapitation did here with Death Atlas. Big concept album. Cattle Decapitation's kind of I like Cattle Decapitation, a lot of their work, because they're constantly in a state of evolving, but there's a center spine in there. Some people would probably say, oh, Death Atlas, that's not a good record. They peaked before or after. I think it's the right album in the right time. And yeah, I remember the first time I ever heard this album, I listened to it like 5 times that day. Couldn't get enough of it. All right, and yet it is still not the most recent album, the final one. I think this is really great for death metal beginners. Number 10, Ossuary's Abhorrent Worship, another debut album like Nocturnus is the Key, and one that I think has got real legs on it. It's now 1 year on. The official album release is sitting at 14,000 views on YouTube. That's not going to be like that for long. Ossuary's power trio, and you gotta love a good power trio. There's nowhere to hide out there. This is death metal for different types of people. One kind of people I'd say who'd like this is the ones who I just want caveman riffs because I'm an actual caveman. Because this sounds performing. Just look at one of my favorite metal. A lot of great artwork in today's video, but one of my favorite modern death metal album covers. I'd also compare it to Dormant Ordeal. That's a different thing though. And it's got black metal flavoring. So if you're somebody who usually likes black metal and you're wanting kind of a bridge to death metal, this is it. Black metal, death metal, doom metal, this is ritualistic metal where there is a bloodletting happening for the good of the tribe. And you know what? They're not afraid of a sick guitar solo either. This one's going to get your hooks in you. It's hooks in you, I'm quite sure. So there you have it. There's 10 death metal albums for beginners, besides Deaths, of course, because it's going to be a pretty long time until I talk about death metal on the channel again. If you've got questions, though, please get in the comments below, or you want to make a comment. What are some albums you think that, what are really good bridge death albums? Like I think Ossuary is. If you like doom metal, if you like black metal, check this one out. Okay. Please subscribe for more episodes of The Metal Substance. Call me Victor.